So welcome to our professional development, the last one. We got one more week left in this program year. It's so crazy as I think back about another year kind of coming to an end. It's always bittersweet, right? The highs and the lows. And one of the things that we've been trying to do at MACAE is really focus on where do we go from here, especially coming out of the pandemic and moving into an endemic. And what does that mean for our programs and our providers? And I kind of, we've had lots of conversations about this with our board and with different people across the association. And I think that in many ways, we're kind of doing the same thing with our programming. We're moving out of a pandemic posture kind of into an endemic posture, and really meaning that we're still feeling the implications. And what does that mean for our program? How do we move forward? How do we pivot and change? What things might return back to a previous state that just because of the crisis we had to move into, and now we're kind of moving back? And what are those shifts like? So I am excited for today's presentation. I'll share a couple of housekeeping things and then we'll dive right in. And then Dr. Don Finn from COE will be joining us a little later in the program, share some really great insights and information kind of rooted in a lot of the work that all of us do. I will tell you that throughout the first part of this session, we'll be referring back to that email I sent with the attachment. And if you need that, I can resend it out again. But it has a reflective piece. And so if you want to just type in that, or if you have a piece of paper that you'd like to just write responses on, you can do that. It's all self-reflective, so it isn't necessarily something that you're going to turn in or anything like that. But if you want to say hi in the chat, and then at this time, I will also put into the chat the Google form, and I'll show you what that looks like if you need sketches. So on the Google form, you'll just go in and you'll put your email, your name, and your PIC if you need sketches. And then at the bottom of that, you'll see that here you'll select the leadership professional development and click submit, and then allow our staff time to submit that. We will do that here within the next couple of days. And then a reminder that you'll get a follow-up email where you actually have to go into the MOEX system and accept all of those sketches and answer those two questions. I think it's how will you use the information and what did you like about the event? So remember that piece is important if you're looking for sketches by the end of June 30th. And if you have any questions about that, feel free to let us know. So I'm going to put that one more time into the chat, and you can go into there and request sketches if you need them. This will be hopefully a really reflective opportunity for everyone kind of as we come to the end of the year. So I wanted to start, I know many of you, but I'm Patrick from MACAE, and I'm going to kind of be leading the first part of this. And, leadership is always a great big topic, right? And I would say it's complicated at least. And lots of times we're given opportunities to think about how to be better leaders, develop certain skills. We're oftentimes tuned into what exactly a good leader or a great leader is. And I thought I'd add a little bit of perspective or humor to this to say that sometimes when we fall into a particular leadership category, there's often assumptions put in place with that leadership type. So here's a cartoon here that I thought was interesting with 8 different types of leaders. The first one is obviously that visionary leader, which we all want to be visionary, but sometimes the visionary leader can also, in this case, it's saying, oh, follow me. Oh, wait, I see a shiny new thing. And sometimes I think those of us that are both in a leadership capacity and those that are what maybe we would term as a follower or a leader or following the leader, we feel like that sometimes, right? An operator, sometimes the flip side of that operator and someone who's super efficient is that, sorry, we just don't have that within our bandwidth to do that. And in this case, he's saying we don't specify bathroom breaks. Compromiser, maybe we should just take a vote, right? And sometimes, as much as we all love democracy, sometimes it can be very arduous. And sometimes we can have too many votes with little outcomes. a drill sergeant. When I say jump, you say how high. I think that's the one that probably most of us don't appreciate, but oftentimes we feel ourselves drawn into that category where we just need to do it, or we feel like, gosh, we're really kind of being forced to make a choice and it's not really our decision, or we're not involved in that process. There's a cheerleader. You guys rock. Who wants pizza? We all love pizza, but sometimes the pizza isn't very good. And so sometimes as when we have cheerleader leaders, we have to be cautious of that and make sure that what we're receiving and the direction we have is actually leading us to an outcome that's productive and that's really benefiting us. A parrot, our strategy is whoever I talk to last, right? Sometimes we have those individuals where, we're just being told something that someone else told them, that someone else told them. Or we find ourselves in that position where we just have to really reiterate what is being dictated to us. And unfortunately, we just don't have we feel like oftentimes we don't have a decision making in that process. The windbag, we all know what that one is, right? The blah, 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 the eyes start to glaze over, the listening starts to stop, the phones come out, the bathroom breaks become more frequent, that's the old windbag there. And then the coach, right? You got to give 110% all the time. And sometimes that can be difficult when we're working with individuals who need individualized attention, especially in the work that we all do. So does anybody resonate with any of these 8 leadership types, or anyone not want to be associated with any of these leadership types? You can put in the chat, or if anyone wants to unmute and share.
I was trying to look at the facial features of my staff as you were going through them to see which ones were resonating with them and which ones they were laughing at the most. But they were pretty good at poker faces because they smiled at a lot of them. So maybe I'm just a mix of all of them.
Sammy, anybody else have anything?
Well, I'm surely a mix of many of these, depending on the situation.
Exactly, Bonnie. For good or bad, right? Great earrings, by the way.
I think you have to be flexible like that, though. Like, you have to be able to adjust your leadership style based on the situation you're in and what you can and cannot do. And like you said before, what you do and do not have control over.
Absolutely.
Sometimes it depends on the staff too. There's certain people I can say one thing to and it might hurt another person's feelings. So I have to be careful how I say it to somebody else.
Absolutely. Any other thoughts? And I think exactly what Bonnie was saying, we kind of encompass all of these different perspectives based on the scenario, based on the people. There are good components of it. Sometimes, as we know as a leader, if you lean too into one, sometimes that can be to your detriment. But these are kind of the most, I would say, prescribed versions of leadership that we see. But today, I hope that we'll focus more broadly on some of the aspects of leadership and how we all in our individual spaces can just be really attentive to how we respond, either when we traditionally fall into one of these categories, or if we work with other leaders who maybe are in some of these categories, and what is our response in the way that we're working with each other or working with those that are dictating to us in that leadership style. So on that page that I sent, this is just that first part. And if you've already completed it, that's great. We'll just take a moment, but I'd like everyone to just finish this statement. You can jot it down, type it into that document. I can, again, resend it if you need it. But just the statement is, this last year was blank, and you can choose to fill any word in there that you think. And I feel blank, your current state of feeling based on this last year. So go ahead and do that. Take about 30 seconds or so. This last year was blank, and I feel blank. And if you choose to add in a few more words than one word, that's totally fine too. So I'm interested, thinking about the words that you chose, if anyone would like to just share where you're at. What did this last year feel like, and how would you describe it?
I can share. This is Brianne from the Macoma ISD. I said it was good but overwhelming. So I think for me, sometimes I'm overwhelmed because there's just so much going on, but the so much going on is good, but it's just a lot sometimes. And I still feel a little like that. I feel good, but a little overwhelmed.
Absolutely, Brianne.
I agree with that. Yeah, I agree too. I said busy, and I feel ready for summer. Summer will relax. I can catch up, do those things. It's busy right now because we're doing summer school, but even that is a little more mellow, a little different. So yeah, we had a really busy year. We were audited this year. We were trying to run our jail program again. We had in-seat classes again, like everybody, you know, and that created a whole different feel for things. So very busy year.
I use the same word that Brianne used, uncertain or overwhelmed and uncertain, because I just didn't know what to expect. And frustrated was another word I used. So, you know, and I'm still there, but I am really happy that we're at the end of the year and students are excited to be finishing, excited to be participating in graduation, all of those things. So, you know, hopefully it's on an upswing.
Tammy put in the chat that she almost put down frustrated. She's feeling exhausted, ready to move on. Yeah, there is something about turning the page, isn't there? About, you know, isn't that funny? Even like with the new year, right? Sometimes it's just having that, okay, it's a different year and it's a different out with the old and with the new, even though it's, you know, I'm going to say it, wear the same shirt in 2021 that I possibly wore in 2022. There's just something about having that changeover, and the same thing I think with the new program year. Anyone else want to share their statement?
I think I just am confirming everybody else. I said surprisingly challenging, because I feel like we're like, okay, we got in our groove, we know what we're doing, but it just continued to be challenging, I think. So that reset button, I think, is really valuable.
Absolutely, Katie. Any others?
I will share. This is Carol. I felt like last year was like a home remodeling or a home renovation. So years ago, we have an older home, and years ago we renovated it. We didn't knock it down and build new. We added on. And when we did that, sometimes we were taking down the original structure and we would find something completely different from what we thought. So then we had to build over, change direction, get code approvals. So I feel like the last year was somewhat of a remodeling. And as much as we wanted to return to in-person classes and go back to what it was, it's never what it was. We know that. We just move forward into a new norm. And so I feel now that I'm just elastic or flexible, because we just have learned to be so fluid. So that's what I wrote down in a fewer word.
Absolutely. I think, you know, part of this presentation was called perspective, right? Perspective, progress, and purpose. And I think it's always just important that we keep perspective, especially those of us that, you know, all of us are leaders in our own way, but those of us that have maybe leadership added on with additional responsibility or greater responsibility, and just taking that time to reflect. We often don't get that opportunity to do that because others are always looking towards us to keep moving forward and be making the decisions. And sometimes that's a heavy burden and a weight that we carry. Sometimes that can be overwhelming and frustrating, especially when we can't really see the path ahead. And I think over the last couple of years, that has been extremely true. You know, what we know, the knowledge that we have from the morning to the afternoon. Remember those days when, you know, the world was changing so quickly and rapidly. And in many cases, it was so difficult to assure people of just common things, right? In our day to day, will we be here tomorrow? Will we have class tomorrow? Will we be open tomorrow? Will we have technology that works tomorrow? That, I mean, all of those baseline things that are just required in what we do. But every day has presented challenges of us even just being able to guarantee that. And so I just think it's good time for all of us, you know, at this point to just kind of reflect. Part of this is just taking that burden away a little bit and kind of off of our shoulders, and kind of being refreshed and renewed for whatever it is that lies ahead, you know, and supporting each other in that.
I would say too, there are several of us that are on statewide committees or trying to make big picture changes and open up doors at a higher level than just for our own programs. And it seems, and I don't know if it's just because now I'm in a higher level leadership role dealing with them more, but I feel like a hamster on a wheel. And I think year after year, I'm just getting more and more frustrated with no matter how much energy you want to put there, you're just not seeing what you want to see and what makes such common sense to you, being seen with the same vision with the ones that can make change. And I think that's why I put exhausted, because I just feel like no matter how hard we try, and Bonnie, you're on many of those meetings too, and you hear we're just in circles all the time. And that's what's exhausting. It's not even my own building issues that are exhausting me. I have a great staff that's, you know, helping me support our students, but sometimes I just feel like, Patrick, like we're just on an island trying to make things happen and our boat is sinking. We're not getting to the big stuff.
Agree that perspective is important, Tammy, because sometimes we want our contributions to be valuable. And often I think when we're put in leadership positions where others are looking for us to make an impact or make a change, and we can't report on a producible outcome, that's extremely frustrating. And we know that our job then is to bear that burden of having to tell others that, I'm sorry, I don't know any more information than I did before this meeting or before yesterday. And that is both personally frustrating, I think professionally frustrating too, is when, you know, it's like I've dedicated my staff time to investigate this or work on this issue. I've dedicated my time personally to work on this particular task. And it's very challenging then when we're looking for leadership or there's others that we're trying to work with, and the needle doesn't seem to be moving. It kind of seems to be flip-flopping back and forth, right? And it's like, well, I guess I'll just go back.
Master, I have to be able to check things off my list, and I can't check any of those off my list, and it kills me.
The only thing I could add to that is that you just have to reconcile that you've done your best in trying to move the needle. You've done your best to support the field, you guys, to provide wonderful dedicated leadership. It's just frustrating when you can't make the change, but you do have to think about the big picture, because it's all politics. And politics is politics. And I have just come to the resolve that if I can come to work every day and do my best and support everyone as best I can and trying to do the right thing, then, you know, you'll have to just go home and sleep at night. I've only recently come to this resolve though, so it may take a few years to make that happen, but you know, you have to do that, otherwise you're going to drive yourself insane and push yourself into early retirement, which you may or may not want to do.
I wish that was an option, Bonnie.
You're so right, Bonnie. I think oftentimes this profession and our passion also pushes us into kind of view through a lens of gap analysis, like what aren't we doing, what metrics aren't we meeting, and sometimes we have to pause and really remember about the positive impact that we actually are having. You know, a lot of times we measure those by our measurable outcomes that we are you know, required based on funding, but all of the interactions or impact that we have, the fact that we serve people who would not have opportunities that if we didn't exist, the changes that we're making with their families, the interactions that we have about helping them just in their life to survive, to thrive, to be resilient. All of those academic skills, the technical skills, the personal development skills. I think sometimes we kind of dismiss those because in our line of work, they often don't measure as a measurable outcome, but they really are measurable. They really are significant. And sometimes I think that's important that we just remind ourselves of that and our staff, our teams of that, because it's just so critical and important. We're really moving the needle on helping people find themselves and live their best life and be successful and define that success for them, whatever that looks like. And I don't know that you can ever put a price on that. I really don't think that you can ever undervalue that or undercut literally changing someone's life for the positive. So on those challenging days, and I know we take that with a grain of salt, but on those challenging days, I think that's important to remind yourself of that and to do that. So I have a short video here. It is a longer video. It's a very, very, very good video. But this is about a TED Talk about leadership with purpose. So that's one of the other P's that we were going to talk about today. And oftentimes I think we have those conversations about why are we doing this? Why are we making a change? And as a leader, sometimes we just get the first question we always get when anything comes out of our mouth is usually why. What are we doing this for? Why is it necessary? Why are we doing this? What is it going to change? And this speaker, he really just talks about what the intentionality of being a leader is and why, how as leaders we can both articulate the need for change in our organizations or why we're doing things, and how we can help tap in and share our leadership with other individuals. He goes on to talk about it a little later and in another video more expressly, but he describes a little bit, not in this first part that we'll see, but he describes a little bit in some of his other work about the lone wolf syndrome in leadership. Is sometimes as leaders, we tend to isolate ourselves and feel like we're the only ones that, can really make that decision. Oftentimes we separate ourselves from others because we don't want them to feel the burden of leadership, that we've accepted this mantle, and we don't want to have that be a burden on anyone else. And so he really talks about the importance of, as a good leader, of really sharing some of that burden, sharing some of those challenges, and really sharing how you can bring your team together in order to really kind of affect some change and not carry that all through yourself. So we'll watch the first few minutes of this. And if you could just put in the chat that you can hear it, just so that.
Good morning. I'm delighted to be here in my neighborhood. TEDx Don Mills happens in Don Mills, that's where I live. And this is an important conversation. So I'm gonna sit down and you and I are gonna have a discussion, I think, on something that is really of significance to leadership everywhere. I wanna make a few arguments with you today. I wanna give you 5 questions to think about and 3 takeaways. The first argument I wanna make is this, that today globally, leadership is in a crisis of credibility. At the international level, at the national level, at the organizational level, at the team level, and at the individual level. Too many of us who are looking to leaders to create a confluence of conditions under which they can be at their best are being disappointed. And many of us find ourselves in this situation. And good for us. Angela Davis, I think, epitomizes the angst of a generation when she says, I'm done with this idea of accepting the things that I can't change. Instead, we need to start changing things we can no longer accept. If you think about this credibility gap that leadership actually exists in today, we need not only have a conversation about what needs to change, but in my view, the second argument I want to make with you is we need to reframe leadership for impact. What do I mean by that? As leaders, let me pause here for a second. I don't just mean leaders positionally. You don't have to have a title that says leader within it. Anyone who makes decisions that has an impact on the lives of other people is therefore a leader. We need to reframe leadership for impact. And all of us need to ask the question that if we're serious about designing tomorrow, who are we developing to take on this new mantra of leadership? So what's that about? To me, this new mantra is really about saying that we have limited leadership to a particular set of attributes, behaviors, and mindsets. And it's time for us to shake that. The funny thing is, most of these definitions of leadership are self-imposed. How many of us have heard the expression, think outside the box, right? I heard that and I was told, think outside of the box. And I was like, oh my gosh, which box am I stuck in? Who put me there? Or at least I hope the box is brown on the outside. As you can tell, I'm down with brown, right? So here's the root of that expression. How do we connect these 9 dots by only using 4 lines? And here's one potential solution. If you look at that closely, you have to go outside of this mental model that you have, that somehow you have to stay within that square. And that's the first thing I want to say. If we're serious about leadership, we need to reframe that and say every leader, anyone who makes decisions that impact other people, needs to ask the question, how do I insist on impact? How do I show up in a way that those who are looking to me to make a difference are impacted positively? Buckminster Fuller, systems thinker, architect, reminded us that we are called to be architects of the future and not its victims. Now, if you were here today at TEDx Don Mills, I'd quarrel with him a little bit. I'm not so sure we need to be architects, but I think we need to be designers of the future. Because to me, design is all about iteration. And at the end of every iteration, what do we get? A prototype. I want to say to myself and to everyone here, we need to prototype the better versions of ourselves as leaders. So what not to do? What not to do is to think about leadership as a static set of activities. Every morning I get up at 4:30, have a double shot of espresso, so I can say the name right of this colleague of mine. His name is, wait for it, Giampiero Petrieri. It's a tongue twister of an Italian name. Swell guy though. He teaches leadership at INSEAD, at Fontainebleau outside of Paris. And Giampiero reminds us that leadership is about 4 enablers of 3 behaviors. He says leadership is about the courage, pause. The courage to do what? The courage to step outside of that box. Then he says leadership is about capacity. None of us are born with it all. Yes, I know, not even I. Thirdly, he says leadership is about curiosity. Leaders are eternally curious about how people see things differently than them, not just like them. And lastly, he says leadership is about commitment. Leaders who actually earn the respect and the integrity of others are the ones who say what they will do and they actually do what they said they would do. So these 4 enablers do what? They enable 3 behaviors: to work with, to learn from, and to give voice to the other. To work with. If we don't have the ability to work with others, particularly those that think and live differently than us, we're always going to leave value on the table. Learn from. If we don't have the humility to learn from other people, we will always be self-contained in our own mental models. And lastly, to give voice to the other. Folks, let me ask you, who do you think he's talking about when he says the other? Who's the other to whom we must give voice? I'm going to suggest the other is anyone who is not us. And leaders who do this well are individuals who can step out of themselves. Why does that matter? Let me show you an example.
So I'm going to pause it there because we could keep watching that because there's lots of good information there. But I just felt like he encapsulated that pretty well in terms of, kind of the different take or spin and kind of tying it in with what we're talking about today. I think that perspective, progress, and purpose are so important. And perspective is really how we work and how we view those around us and how we view the work that we do. So much of the work that we do, I think, is valuable. And we don't talk about that enough. We really do not honor ourselves as professionals in the work that we do. We're too darn humble in adult alternative community education. We really don't want to preach what we do. Often we don't really have time. We really don't have time to share what we do. And we really need to have that perspective about how are we conducting the work that we do and who are we working with. The second one, I think really ties in with progress about what he was talking about. How are we continuing learning and growing, learning for ourselves, learning about the people that we serve, learning about the systems that we're a part of. Sometimes it's very easy to stay stagnant in the work that we do because things around us are not overwhelming. Not because we don't care, not because we're not invested in it, but just because things, especially over the last few years, have just been evolving at such a rapid pace. It's like all I can control is that I'm just going to show up here and do what I need to do. That's all I can really have perspective from. But if we are open to learning and looking at more, I think that can impact the way that we continue to move forward or move our system, our teams forward. And the last one, I think that purpose piece is so important, giving voice to those that oftentimes don't have that opportunity. One thing that I think that we do well and just need to be reminded of is that we are not necessarily always going to be the voice box for the individuals that we work with. It really is. We are allowed, during this temporary time that they're with us, we are an advocate for them. But at the same time, we're also helping them to find their voice and to be an advocate for themselves. I think we do that very well. I think that's a part when we talked about those kind of other things that we do outside of those measurable skills. That's absolutely something that we do on a daily basis. How do we help you establish your schedule? How do we help you establish your priorities? How do we help you just refine your values that you have? Everyone has those within them. Everyone has their limits. Everyone has their goals. How do we help those around us try to find those things? So if we can kind of ground our leadership and our work in those purposes, I really do think that it kind of can help us to continue to move not only ourselves forward through the work, but our teams, those around us, and particularly the system as a whole. I do think that we are making changes, and it. So to your point, Mary Jo, it does seem like sometimes we can be on autopilot because that is a natural and a safe place to be sometimes. And sometimes we will have periods of that. Some progress is slow, very granular. And we do need those periods of stagnancy to build resilience, but also to build a baseline of where do we go next from here. We need those plateaus just as we need the mountains and the valleys to keep that perspective as well. Any thoughts on the video and what you heard? Any takeaways from that?
I'm going to be honest. I appreciate the affirmation of the way that I conduct business. I mean, I was hearing things that I do. So I'm glad to know that my approach is something that someone else would support, and that I'm working on doing good things. So I appreciate that piece.
As you should, Bonnie, as you should. Others?
I'll share that what resonated with me from what he said is leadership is a commitment. Like you have to make sure what you're putting out there, you are able to contribute to. You make sure your staff has the bandwidth to take care of it. You can't just throw this and throw that and throw that if you're not committed to the follow through. Otherwise, when you do try to put something out there that you really need to do, they might not come along with you because they're like, oh, this is, the next shiny object or whatever, and it'll be gone. And, we will never have follow through with it. So I feel like it's really important to make sure wherever you're putting your energy on, you're committed to using it in that way.
Absolutely. Anyone else?
can I just follow up with one other thing that in regards to what Tammy said? And that is, you have to have, by giving the people that you work with, your staff, whatever you want to refer to them as, your team is what I refer to them as, you have to give them a voice. And they have to buy into what you see as the vision. And if they don't, it's not going to work. And so that's why giving others voice and supporting them, but at the same time, helping them figure out how to be leaders themselves. Because there is a fine line, especially when you're answering to other people, as to way to go about doing things. And so I'm always sharing with my staff, an observation of, this is how you may have approached it. This is what you might think about next time, not in a necessarily negative way ever, but just to give them insight as to what the bigger picture is in operating as a leader, because I think that that's very difficult sometimes, especially when you're answering to a lot of different people in a lot of different places. So really figuring out, where is the right time to say something? When do you just keep your mouth shut until you make sure you know what is going on and how it fits together? So that's just, that's why I work in the way that I do, because I want them to be successful as they move forward in being leaders.
So important, Bonnie. I on Instagram, I was going to share this here, and you just tied it right in so nicely. I follow a Brunch with Babs. So she was a grandmother that blew up on Instagram, became famous because she had little wise sayings, and she would do recipes and things like that. And she shares these kind of like daily little tidbits from, Grandma Babs is her thing. And so she's big on social media if you are on Facebook or Instagram. And so one of the things that she was mentioning as her token of the day, something to take away, was when you want to say something, there may be, and I'm trying to remember the 3 questions that she asked, but the first one was, is it the right time? Is this the right time for me to say something? Am I the right person to say that? Really thinking about, in a leadership capacity too, does it need to come from me? And is it the right thing to say? That was the last one. So this is the right time. Am I the right person? And is it the right thing to say? Does it need to really be said? Is this the time and I think many of us recognize that. Is it the time and the proper place? And those are just simple manners. But more deeply, I just think that resonates with us as leaders, of really being intentional about when we enter into these conversations and helping those around us to also kind of have that. There's so much coming at us, and oftentimes it can be very difficult, and it is very easy to pile on, right? I mean, it's just like one thing after the other. Can be a cascading effect sometimes. And sometimes our responsibility, and sometimes all that we can commit to as a leader, is to say, that's not something that we're going to tackle today. I don't want us to take that burden on as a team, because today we're just going to take on this issue. And we're going to do our best to just focus on this today, because that's where our energies are. That's where our commitment is. That's what our capacity is. And that can be very challenging sometimes, because you have to wade through voices wanting to talk about certain issues, and some other people feel like it's an emergency that's important for them. But that's part of, I think, this perspective, progress, and purpose is really evaluating, is this the right space? Do we have the capacity to do that? And are we, or me, the right person to do that? Do we need others to be engaged and involved with this conversation? So therefore, we're going to pause it and put that on another conversation. Yeah, go ahead, Tammy.
Patrick, basically what you're saying is, you need a soundboard, you need a sounding board. So if it can't be like, I have my coordinators, and we always meet and we kind of bounce ideas and talk about, well, what about this or this schedule? Or what do you think this person's going to react to that, before we take it to everybody? Because if it doesn't make it through, that's where we kind of frame things, and then we take it to the staff and get the big, entire picture. But if you don't have someone within your staff you can trust to be a sounding board, I mean, poor Mary Jo, I tell you, she's my counselor, that you can go to express a concern, or you're frustrated with how someone's working with something and how best to frame it for that person and their, personality. If you don't have someone within your program, find a peer in another program that you can use as a sounding board, because chances are they've dealt with something similar. And sometimes you just verbalizing it and talking it through with them, then you don't even need to go and end up dealing with it. You realize, okay, let's move on. If it's not a real issue, if it's not going to happen again, it's just a way to, like, I'm a verbal person. Once I verbalize something, then usually it's better. And poor Patrick gets the brunt of some of that too when it comes to grant issues. But I would just recommend finding a sounding board either within the field or within your program that you can trust before needing to take it to everybody. Because what you think might be the greatest idea, because you've thought about it in this mindset, you definitely need to have other mindsets involved, because they could see it totally different. And that person could be right on, and I'm way off in what I was thinking. And that would be a terrible feeling to go speak to someone about something when actually I'm the one seeing it wrong.
Brianne was putting in there to that effect, Tammy, the THINK acronym that many may be familiar with, about before you speak or ask something or comment on something, is it true, helpful, inspiring, necessary, and kind? It's the same, philosophy. By sharing this information, am I going to rock the world? Do I need to rock the world today? Can we rock the world tomorrow, right? It's the same kind of mentality. So here, this is, I went to the CASAS conference, and one of the days at the resort, you had to pass by the pool in order to go to the conference center. And I saw this sign, and I have never seen a sign like this before in my life. And it actually reminded me of this professional development. And I won't read it, you can read it. But I really just thought sometimes we really do get stuck, like exactly what you were talking about, Tammy, in this narrow vein, and what seems practical to us when actually we put it out there causes chaos or confusion. And for me, here's what I thought, and I'm happy to hear what others think. I thought, wow, that some event or series of events happened to trigger individuals or workers at this resort having to be involved in this crisis, I'll just call it that, having then to call a signage company to make a sign. And I don't know if signage companies have pre-made signs or if you pay by the letter, I don't know. But the fact that a situation escalated to that much of a level, and then here we are now posting a sign here for all future guests to partake out of all of the scenarios that can happen at a pool, out of all of the events that happen in and around a pool, that this was the most pertinent to put on a sign as you enter into this relaxing pool area. And so I thought, I respect the process, and I respect the probably the seriousness of the nature of this incident or series of incidents, but I was laughing at the fact that it got to this point, right? That this is now something that's just common, or that this is something that, and so sometimes I think as leaders, we need to be careful to watch out for those rabbit holes, because sometimes our train of thought definitely makes sense to us, but when we parlay it to others, or when we adopt policies or try to enact programmatic changes, it's like we need to have that perspective as well, that it really does make sense, and it actually is practical, and it actually is moving forward in a direction that's helpful to some people. This may be very helpful to some people, but for others, I'll just say, for me, this wasn't even within the realm of my possibility of being an issue or a concern. And so then it's kind of like, oh, that just raised my eyebrow about, I will definitely probably not be going into this pool while I am staying at this resort area. So I just thought it aligned perfectly with what we were talking about today, about sometimes best intentions don't always lead us to what we exactly want. So
That is shocking. Like, did the customer service people, do the sales reps, do they know that's there? I could see the pool attendant or the pool cleaning crew wanting something like that. But the fact that they actually got it is astounding. Like they could just say with COVID, like, you know, because it's 14 days, if you've been sick or feeling unwell, or if you have stomach issues, but to actually say that, I would not want to go in that pool.
That's how I felt, Tammy. And I thought probably the individuals or staffs that were engaged with this conversation, it's just like, oh my gosh, the time, the energy, the resources, you know, is this really an issue? And is this something that we have control over? Is this something that we need to even be engaged in? Not to do a pun, but should we even wade into this water of posting something? I mean, I that's what I thought. And it just, I thought it was a funny way of parlaying. Like sometimes we need to wade out of the water because it's just that we don't know what's in the water, and this isn't really our lane or our territory. And sometimes it is okay to back out of that water that is there and move in a different direction, because it's probably, we're going down, we're spiraling or cascading, like I said, into something that isn't really helpful, or isn't keeping us in perspective, or isn't helping us progress forward. So I hope you found a little humor in that. So we'll go to our next set of questions here. If you want to go back to your chart here, and just take a minute or two here. What's something, keeping perspective, what's something that you love this year and why? Something that you really feel very proud of, or something that you've been involved in. This could be personal or professional, but certainly I just want you to take a minute or two to kind of reflect and think about that. You can write on your notes or put into your own form there. And I see, Don, you've joined us. We're going to transition to you in just a minute, okay? Thanks for joining us.
Sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks. Although I must confess, I walked in when I saw that pool sign and I'm thinking, what meeting did I just get into?
We're talking about keeping perspective in leadership. So we're just responding to the questions quickly. What is something you loved this year? Why? What are you most proud of? Again, kind of going back to what we were talking about earlier about we don't often do this as leaders. And it's so important to have that a reflective time for ourselves and for our teams to really highlight the good things that we're doing. Does anyone want to quickly share anything? Bonnie was saying, well, first of all, Bonnie said, I would not get into that pool. So I agree with you. The second she said, my team is pulling together to get the post-pandemic program off the ground. So really kind of evaluating what that looks like and having conversations around that. Tammy was saying she's proud of the staff for continuing to support students. Yeah, I think one thing of one of our adult programs is just the customer service that we've been able to deliver despite incredible odds, for sure. Great, thanks for sharing those things. So transitioning kind of to the next P here around progress. This cartoon I saw and I thought that was applicable. I wonder what the leadership lesson is in that, in terms of sometimes the ways that we measure progress as leaders can be very interesting. And sometimes our definition of progress is different from those that are following us or that we're helping to lead. Sometimes being the leader at the front means that we do have those risks and pitfalls, and sometimes it doesn't always go well. But having the resiliency to rise again, climb back up that mountain, is also important. It also doesn't mean that we, sometimes leading from the back is a strategy. But in some scenarios, we do need to be the ones at the front. If anyone's going to fall down the mountain, it has to be oftentimes the leaders that are there or walking in stride with our team, and not necessarily letting others trample down the mountain and then we catch up later. I just think it's again an important message here about why it's so important. And Mary Jo said, yeah, Tammy should go first. So sometimes we just have to keep that in terms of our forward progress and our forward momentum. Are we staying together? Is the team in the right direction? Do we know what's ahead? We can't know every scenario ahead, certainly, but where's the support? Where's the tow line? You see the people behind are all, tied together, and for whatever reason, this leader kind of wandered away from that line and the pick there and just has hurtled down the mountain. We really don't want to see that happening to anyone, right? So in the next couple of questions, again, just take a minute here. I think part of this reflective step is to look at, were there any missteps that you have? But where did it leave you? We often label things as a misstep or that was a mistake, but was there anything that came from that actually changed your trajectory in a positive way? You avoided falling down that mountain because you saw it, because you by accident stumbled onto something else. I think that's so important to stop there and think about that. And then thinking about that, or if there's any missteps or anything that you didn't accomplish, is there something that you want to accomplish in the year ahead that might have been left unfinished? Is there something that really you just say, wow, I wish we would have done that, but I can prioritize or goal set for the next year as I continue to work, or we continue to work with our team, of something that we really want to dedicate ourselves to? Would anyone like to share any thoughts on these questions? Tammy was talking about advocacy. She really feels like maybe sharing more about the program with local reps and leaders or city. It's a great goal.
I think I'd share a really big misstep that being specifically to IET and getting students ready for work, realizing the huge gap between education and employers, and what we see as work ready and what employers see as work ready. Just kind of like blew open when we put in some new staff this year, who came from the business world, to see where we were at. So huge misstep. However, we already have things in place, and we worked most of the year to kind of remedy and lessen that gap. So I would say that would be part of the surprisingly challenging year, but we still grew exponentially to solve these problems.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Katie. Anyone else?
I'll speak to accomplished in the year ahead, and nothing is ever finished.
Right.
You're always stepping back and reworking. At least we are constantly rethinking, reworking, trying to figure out how to do things better. Today is a different place and a different time than it was last fall. I was just talking about enrollment in the college, not for our program in particular, but in general, as well as graduation rates not being where they, from high schools, they're not where they should be in our area. So how can we reconnect these students who have not finished high school, get them into our program and continue to move them forward one way or another? So that's one of the things that we've been focused on this year, is re-engaging people that have not been engaged, whether they're the kids that haven't finished high school yet or those that are the 19 to 25-year-olds. But I honestly think that everyone is still, even though there's lots of people that are, lots of jobs still available, a lot of our students are working now. And they're not interested in completing high school or a GED or going on to the college because they need money, for one thing. It's a recession. People need to work to have money. And they can also go and get jobs right now that will pay them what is traditionally a starting rate. So going back to my original thing, what do I want to accomplish for next year is really trying to find where are these potential students and how do we connect with them and focus our marketing and outreach on that goal over the summer. See if it pans out into being anything by fall.
Something of what you said also reminded me of the video that we watched about being a designer of the future, and that part of that leadership is always kind of stepping back and looking at the next iteration. And that can be extremely frustrating when we're always tweaking and it's never perfect. And oh, let's just fix this. It's, you know, it's almost like painting a picture, right? Oh, I just want to add a little bit more here and more here. And sometimes we can go a little crazy doing that. But it's also, I think, that's what sets this field of adult education apart from lots of other fields. And I think it takes a special type of professional to work in that environment, to you know, we all get frustrated, certainly, but certainly to just be open to that there is that constant evolution piece. If I guess if there's a standard or something, you know, they always say death and taxes. I guess maybe in adult education, it's that things are always changing. That's one constant: death, taxes, and, well, grant approval delays, and and the evolution of the changing nature of our programming, for sure. Thanks for sharing that. All right, and I want to transition to Don here, and then we'll kind of come back and wrap up this last bit. But I want to go to, I'm so happy that we were joined and that he accepted this invitation. Dr. Don Finn, he's the past president of COABE, and he has done so much work and been so instrumental in the leadership of adult education across the nation for the last several years, in his own work, in his consulting work, in his leadership at COABE. And I thought today he might just bring us an interesting perspective about things ahead as we kind of transition into a new program year, what's on the radar, and then just some lessons that he can reflect on in terms of his own leadership capacity, helping to obviously lead one of the largest organizations in the country for professional learning, but also just thinking about what are some priority skills or takeaways that would be important for all of us to consider and to think about. And then we'll come back together and certainly wrap up. So I'm going to stop sharing and I want to welcome Dr. Don.
All right. Thanks so much, Patrick. It's good to be here with you all. I really appreciate the invitation and appreciate that little walk down memory lane with that photo that you had up there, because this is almost invisible now. Regardless, it's really a pleasure to be here and I appreciate the invite. Patrick, could you go ahead and allow me to share my screen? Would you mind giving me the keys to the helm for just a moment? Yep. I promise not to do anything crazy.
You should be good now.
All right. And I certainly don't have any entertaining signs like you had. So anyway, here we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start the slideshow and share that with you. For me personally, one of the greatest inventions in the world is the double monitor setup at your desktop. Oh my gosh, it's like life-changing. So anyway, but hopefully you can see that. So yeah, you know, when Patrick asked me to chat with y'all, really to try to be an encouragement and maybe share a little bit about leadership and you know, some characteristics and maybe some lessons that I've learned over the years. I just decided to call this today the summer in 2023, because I think the only thing I'm probably one of the only things between you and the summer, right, at this point, or at least summer is coming for you all. Maybe you're already there, but just want to you know, give you an opportunity to look ahead. And so one of the things that I want to do is I want to take an opportunity to get to know you just a little bit. And so in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and do a quick stop share, and I'm going to share another screen with you. This is an interactive activity. This is called a Padlet. And so you can see here that we have a map of the United States. And I know you all are in Michigan, right? And I'm over here. And so what I'd like to do is just to get a sense of where you are, I'm going to demonstrate, and then I'm going to go ahead and give you the link. When you get to this page, and I'll send it to you in just a minute, you go ahead and you hit that little pink circle there, and you have two options. You can do a drag and drop, and you can drop your pin to let us know where you are. I'm going to guesstimate and see if I get it right. Let me see. Oh, not too bad, actually. All right, so I have that option, or again, I can go back up here and I can actually, let me go ahead and stop the drag and drop. All right, let's do this. All right, here we go. All right, so I'm actually on San Fiddler Road in Virginia Beach, and then once I've got my location, Go ahead and type in my name and hit publish, and boom, my little pin is there. All right, so I'm going to give you the opportunity to do that now. And in the chat box, I'm going to drop oh, come on now. I even preloaded it. I was all proud of myself. All right, let me do it again. All right, here we go. So if you can go ahead and click right on that, if you're near your computer or your phone, you can click on the Padlet link right there, and it will open up that, that map, and you can actually zoom in. You can get in quite a ways, and you can just drag your pin there, drop your name, or you can put in your street address. It doesn't necessarily share all that information, but I just want to see where you all are joining in from as well. It's actually been a very rainy day at the beach today. But a rainy day at the beach is better than a sunny day at work, right? So here we go. Oh, good. All right, look at that. We're dropping our pins. Good job. Good job. You know, so this is just a little bit of an interactive activity, and of course we're a relatively small group here, but we can see. Oh yeah, look at Joe. Wow. All right. Zooming out just a little bit because I know that Michigan goes way up there too. Just in case, I don't want to leave anybody out. You know, in Virginia we have the Eastern Shore. And so when we do that outline map of Virginia, if we neglect the Eastern Shore, we hear about it. It's kind of like Alaska and Hawaii on a US map, right? Don't leave them out. So anyway, well, good. Well, it's good to see so many of you concentrated. It looks like we got, I wonder who's in Lansing. And then we have folks around the Detroit metro area, Ann Arbor. All right, great. Well, thank you for participating in that little activity. I'm going to go ahead and stop that share and go back to my presentation. Really just again to kind of get to know where you're coming from, where you are geographically. That's kind of a fun activity. So I want to gather your thoughts, and it seems as though you've already been chatting prior to me getting here a little bit about your programs, and you've had an opportunity to reflect on what's been going on and what's happening in the future and so on. And so if you all wouldn't mind jumping to, you can see the web address here, www.menti.com. And so when you go to menti.com, it's going to give you, you're going to go to a screen that's going to say, enter your code here. You're going to have enter your code here. And so again, in the chat box, I'm going to go ahead and drop an 8-digit code that you can copy and paste into the Menti. The code is 69328924, completely computer generated. Those numbers have no meaning to me other than the fact that they're going to go ahead and open up the Menti. And we're going to go ahead and put a word cloud together. And so as you go over to the Menti, I want you to reflect back just a little bit over the past couple of years. Hopefully you're seeing the questions there that say the greatest challenges faced by adult ed since 2020. And you have an opportunity to enter 3 words. And if you would go ahead and do that, start entering your words. So focusing again on the greatest challenges faced by adult ed, and this is your program, this is your students, this is your leadership, this is adult ed nationwide, and so on. So are you all seeing that? Having an opportunity to drop some words in there? So once you go ahead and enter all of those words in there, you get your 3 words in, you go ahead and hit submit. And it's going to create a word cloud. And yes, you can use multiple words. You're limited to 25 characters, including spaces. But this is kind of a nice opportunity to gain a sense of where you're at in your thinking and your experience, and also to see if there's a possibility in seeing some commonality of thought and so on. I'm going to go ahead and so you can see the Menti as it's our word cloud as it's starting to take effect here. And so we're seeing a lot of different things. So understanding adult education is a great challenge. The pandemic, of course, COVID ramifications. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Mental health issues. Absolutely. That's something that we're finding more and more. Focusing on employment, telling our stories. Technology, right? Has technology not become like a primary factor, particularly in the past couple of years in our programs, particularly as we have been thrust into emergency remote learning. How many of you walked out of the office on Friday in March and came back on Monday, or maybe didn't come back, but were approached by an email or a phone call that said, oh, and by the way, all of our programs are going virtual. Don't worry, it's only going to be for 2 weeks. This thing's going to blow over. And right, okay, yeah, I know I'm preaching to the choir. So meeting measurable skills, absolutely, absolutely. What else do we have? Raising awareness. Awareness is a big issue. Recession, I mean, you're talking about, yeah, just the past few months, that's really becoming more and more of a reality. Homelessness, yeah. Delivery change, yep. I bet that has something to do with technology as well. Enrollment, exhaustion, yes, find a beach. Find a beach. So so there are a lot of different things and a lot of challenges that we've been facing in our programs. And I think it's very important to remain mindful of how those challenges are impacting us and also impacting our teammates, our team members, not only our those who work with us or beside us, but those that we are working with our students and so on. And so I want to talk just a little bit about how to keep the team focused and on point. And so I like to cite a few authors that I read. One of them is John Gordon. You may have heard of John Gordon. And he has a number of different books under his, he's probably best known for a book called The Energy Bus that came out a number of years ago. But he talks a lot about teamwork. He talks a lot about attitudes and those types of things. He's done a lot of studying of Zig Ziglar and so on, which I know, positive psychology and those types of things, but yet that kind of stuff does have its place, doesn't it? And so, he talks about the power of a positive team. And one of the things that he talks about in this book is he has 7 things that will hurt your team and 7 things that will help your team. And he lays them out in this manner. So the 7 things that are going to hurt your team as you're working together and working towards your goals is, first of all, energy vampires. Those folks that take an inordinate amount of your time and your energy, that really, those are the ones that like suck the life out of the room when they come in, whether it's through complaining, negative attitudes, drawing attention to themselves and so on, right? Which of course we have complaining, which feeds into that. Another thing that'll hurt your team is ego, right? Drawing attention to themselves and, not budging, not looking at the team thing, but letting the ego take over. A level of selfishness within the organization amongst individuals, jealousy, resentment, and pessimism. All of these things can just drag your team down tremendously as they're brought into the mix. And yet, he talks about 7 things that will help your team. The number one being love, just having a love for your team, having an opportunity to really, to get to know your team and to, just show them as a leader, that you love the team, you love the mission, and you're committed to it, to be a source of encouragement for those under your direction and that you're working with. A level of vulnerability that you are willing to admit mistakes. You're willing to fess up when you really don't know something, and so on. A selflessness that it's not about you. Totally the opposite, obviously, of selfishness, that it's not about you. It's not about your priorities necessarily, but that you're willing to take one or take multiple ones for the team. Generating a sense of unity amongst the team member, communicating with your team and really communicating with your team in a way that is encouraging, that is truthful. And then demonstrating optimism whenever possible. I think if you get under the Eeyore attitude, and how many of you have been under an Eeyore leader? Anybody? It can be really, really tough when the sky is falling constantly to try to really press on. And so, the power of a positive team. Look, as the quote box over here says, it's your culture and your team. Own it. And I think that John talks a lot about those things. A couple of other ones. That you are contagious. As a leader, you are contagious. And, the energy that you're putting into your team and into the culture of that team determines the quality of the team. Something that you really need to think about. If you're investing in the team and you're putting your energy into that, it really does help to determine the culture. How many of you have taken over for other leaders.
Is anyone else losing Don, or is it my connection?
You come in behind other world and so on. Oh, no,
I'm losing too.
hold on. Hold on. Okay, it's coming
Same
back.
here.
It's coming back. All right.
You're back. It's that too much sunshine on the beach, Don.
No, it's not sunny. It's cloudy. It's cloudy. And I apologize for that. It does happen every now and then because we've had rain. And so being at the edge of the continent when it rained, like you didn't appreciate it. It's happened to me in a live class tonight during a thunderstorm. So hang with me. But you know that positive and united program as the leader of things are just so incredibly important to the success of it, particularly not only in the good times, but particularly in those really hard times and so on. So another group of ideas that I want to share comes from a book called the Oz Principle, Getting Better Results Through Individual and Organizational Accountability. So as leaders, we are the ones who have to demonstrate that we are accountable and that we're open to accountability. And when like one of the things with COABE, for example, leading that organization, my volunteer full-time job for many years now, although I'm kind of moving towards the sunset of the past presidency, I can tell you that we're leading a field of 79,000 practitioners, and we're collaborating with a number of different groups and organizations in order to advocate for adult education, in order to move the needle forward. And those kinds of things it takes a lot of effort. It takes lead. Do we have courage to lead? Do we have the heart?
We are losing you a little bit, Don.
Does it help if we turn off our videos for him, or no? It doesn't make a difference.
Let's try. In solidarity, let's all turn off our. Oh there he is.
All right, I think I'm back. Am I back?
Okay, great. Thanks, Don.
I've been resurrected. Gosh, do it again. No, we're still unstable.
We appreciate you, Don. Thank you so much for doing this.
All right. All right, still trying. All right, can you all hear me?
We can hear you, Don.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Okay, so
No worries at all.
I appreciate that. Thank you. Can you all see my screen, or do I need to share again?
I
Please share
cannot
again.
see it.
Okay. Hold on a minute. All right.
We just feel glad that we're not the only ones that this happens to, Don. That's really what it is.
Yeah. Well, one of the disadvantages of working from home. So anyway, hopefully you heard most of that, but basically with the Oz principle, it has to do with having the attitudes to lead your organization and to avoid dropping below the line. Now, below the line attitudes and below the line behaviors and so on really are they're characterized as the blame game, right? And so it has to do with adopting a wait and see attitude. If change is coming along, or if you're getting into a new initiative, sometimes below the line attitudes are, I'm going to drop back and just wait and see what happens with this thing. Or perhaps demonstrating confusion and saying, well, I don't know what it is that's required of me, or tell me what to do. Right? Those you're deflecting that accountability, or simply to say, well, yeah, I know we're doing this new thing, but that's not my job. This is what I do. Or just ignore or deny the facts, ignore or deny what's happening there, or ultimately say, no, it's not me, it's Patrick. He did it. I did my responsibility, he did not. So the finger pointing, or just simply adopting the mindset of completely covering your tail and not taking accountability. So the blame game and living below the line is just, it's absolutely toxic. Now the above the line behaviors are in 4 steps, really. That you're seeing the issue, that as you come along an issue or a challenge, you see it and you take it on, you own it. You don't deflect, you don't say it's somebody else's job, you own it. And you look for ways collaboratively to solve the issue, what are some approaches that we can take to do this, and ultimately then to do it, getting to the do it part of leadership. And so, we want to live our lives above the line. We want to live our lives in a way to where we're heading the challenges and heading toward the challenges that we're facing directly. So a couple of things about COABE that I want to talk about. And I heard a little bit of the discussion earlier. So hopefully we can serve as an organization, as a resource to you across your state and in your individual programs. And, our mission is at the heart of everything we do. And that is to inspire educators so adults succeed and communities thrive. And what we do, how we do that is through leadership, professional development, advocacy, and general communication to the field. So some of the characteristics of COABE, who we are, we represent 79,000 educators, 2,000 plus programs serving 1.2 million adult learners. We do different things. You probably heard, how many of you, if you probably just use a little raise your hand symbol there, but how many of you actually were able to join our conference either in person or virtually this past spring? We were located in, we were in Seattle. So got a few of you there. Good. Well, hopefully you'll have the opportunity to join us again. I'll talk about that a little bit later. But, these are opportunities for not only professional development, to hear from individuals in the field who are making an impact. Of course, you're all making an impact, but sharing some ways to make an impact, to increase your impact, to increase your effectiveness, both administratively and also instructional. But we also provide different symposiums and webinars. And so, COABE members, you should be getting as COABE members, you should be getting our emails about our different seminars, about our different symposia, about our different webinars that we're doing. And the vast majority of these are free. In fact, most of them are free because they're part of our mission. And so we really want you to take advantage of those things. We have our journal, we have, different communications that we send out, a lot of emails that go out, and a lot of communications, a bunch of legislative contacts that we've made. That's one thing that COABE has become that's become synonymous with COABE is advocacy. We award $40,000 to our members through different awards. And we have a bunch of different initiatives as well. So when we look at our membership, we're really largely a teacher organization. About 80% of our members are teachers who are working in adult education classrooms. Another 12% or so are administrators, and about 5% of adult learners are adult learners. And so we're building that. We're building our adult learners as well. Our membership there. And then we have others who are researchers or paraprofessionals and so on. And one of the things that we know, and again, we're preaching to the choir, so I'll go over it quickly, but is that our field does have a funding issue. Basically, some of the stats are showing between $400 to $1,200 per student goes to adult ed, compared to about $10,000 per pupil in elementary education. In fact, some of the latest NRS data that just came out showed the average at being about $580 for every adult learner versus $10,000 per elementary education. So that's a huge disparity, a huge gap. And also looking at the fact that generally speaking, those who are, it's a very part-time field. Generally the pay is much less, for our teachers. Other challenges, besides the funding, the systems that are serving our adult learners are not necessarily communicating very well. Also having, so they're not interfacing very well. Also, there's a disconnect between the WIBs, the workforce investment boards, and the reporting requirements. In fact, one of the things that COABE is focused on tremendously as the WIOA re-up legislation is being put together, COABE was very instrumental in actually getting it worked into the legislation for a pilot system for alternative reporting systems that look less on the measurable gains and look a little bit more as they relate to life skills and so on. So that's been worked in, and hopefully that will become part of the legislation, and we can help to enact that as WIOA, or if WIOA moves forward. But we're really working to do our part to break barriers to transform lives through literacy. And you can see here that, between 2016 and 2021, many outcomes in adult education, a huge impact really across the board as far as the millions of measurable skills gains that have been reported. And again, we're trying to work on that making the measurable skills gains a little bit more reasonable. Some of them are pretty challenging, but looking at, just over 24,000 attaining citizenship, nearly 400,000 high school diplomas, and so on. So, definitely having an impact. As far as looking at the return on investment, looking at the tax revenues and, reduced expenses for different support programs and so on. Looking at, it's really hard to quantify, but a lot of the studies are pointing to roughly $200 billion economic impact and reduced funds that are put towards public support programs for low literacy adults. And, the fact that almost 50% of the GED recipients go on to higher education and, generally are very persistent. We have different innovations and different initiatives that we're running. One of them is the Student as Leaders focus that we have in COABE, where we have a student ambassador program. This is a project that actually began in Arizona a number of years ago, and we nationalized that under the leadership of now our president-elect Regina Suit out of Arizona. Now we have ambassador programs in 37 states. These are folks who are becoming competent in legislative activities and promoting adult literacy to decision makers. Programs succeed when learners lead. Incentive grant. We have a Students as Leaders conference strand that focuses, and in fact, we are having, I'm editor of the COABE Journal, so our spring 2023 journal is going to focus on students as leaders specifically, and looking at how students positively impact programs and how they can take the lead in our programs and so on. So a call for articles is going to be going out in July, probably about mid-July. We also have opportunities for adult learners with partnerships with Google and Amazon and so on. We do have the Move Ahead with Adult Ed, and I know I'm running out of time, but Move Ahead with Adult Ed where we have almost 2,400 local programs that are part of the Move Ahead, where people can do, individuals can do local Google searches for programs. Check it out on our website, coabe.org. Look under the initiatives, strategic initiatives tab, and you can learn more about Move Ahead. It is an award-winning initiative that really takes Google Ads and actually uses Google Ads to draw people to individuals who might be seeking out adult education programs, and it really has elevated and enhanced the reach of local programs. Our Educate and Elevate campaign is, and again, this is on our website, but this is an opportunity for individuals to reach out to decision makers to really promote adult education. We've been successful in staving off funding cuts, and actually through the years now, through the past 7 or so years, we've actually been instrumental through this and engaging the field to adding about $108 million in funding for adult ed, and about 270,000 legislative connections through our online tool, but also face-to-face activities, as well as Zoom-based. Again, check out our website, coabe.org. It'll take you to Educate and Elevate, or you can go directly to educateandelevate.org, where you can download various fact sheets. These are sheets that are reproducible, printable, that you can send electronically or hand off in person to decision makers and legislators. We are actually in the process now of revamping all of them with some of the latest NRS data and so on. So hopefully those will be coming out. Our goal is to have them come out before Adult Education and Family Literacy Week this fall. We'll have those all together. And then we do have student success stories that are highlighted on the website. And we encourage local programs to submit success stories, those whose lives have been improved and who've really had adult education's had a true impact for them. We have a State Advocates for Adult Education Fellowship program, and that is to really help individuals to learn about advocacy efforts, particularly at the state and local level. And this runs on an annual cycle. So in the fall, we're going to be putting out an application for more state fellows to learn about advocacy and promoting adult education. It really has helped not only at the federal level, but really is filling in that gap at the state level, because we find that state offices of adult education, of course, are prohibited from lobbying or from advocating, particularly as it relates to money. And we do find that there's some unevenness as far as state associations being able to reach out. And so COABE started this initiative to try to help fill that gap and to get people engaged in the legislative process. I had mentioned the COABE Journal before. We're very proud to lead that effort. We reformatted the journal in 2018 to really take a look at research to practice and have a practitioner focus. We're just finishing up reviewing articles that have to do with COVID and the impact of COVID. We're hearing a lot of great stories about how programs have grown and how they have increased their reach because of COVID and so on. Again, you can check us out at coabe.org. Then we have the IBM Skills Build, which is online professional development for educators and students to increase their employability as well. And finally, almost finally, got a couple of things here. First of all, make plans to join us in Atlanta. I know that, maybe perhaps some budgets and so on were not in place to allow people to travel this past spring, but I do hope that your PD dollars can be used to get you to Atlanta. The conference runs from April 2nd to 5th, April 2nd being our pre-conference day, where we have half day and full day intensive trainings and so on, and then followed by 3 days of conference. One person said at one point in time, whether you're going to heaven or hell, you got to go through Atlanta. So we know Atlanta is really easy for a lot of people to get to, particularly flying out of Detroit. I know, boy, you can get right there. So anyway, so please plan on joining us. It will be a hybrid event as well if individuals are unable to come, or if you can't fund, an entire team to come, some folks can join in online as well through the hybrid event. But it's going to be a great, great conference. We're really looking forward to it. So now that we've kind of gone over all these types of things and so on. Oh, by the way, here's our different national partners and so on. But now that we've gone, through all of these things and so on, I'm wondering that, in light of what we've talked about here, in light of your discussion before I even entered the meeting, and even talking about some of these things now, wonder if you might not, if you'd be okay going back to Menti, if you have that. Again, it's menti.com. And if you can go ahead and enter the code again, in case you don't have it. And that code is 69328924. Going to go ahead and copy that again. Going to drop it in there. And I encourage you to, when thinking about the 2022-23 academic year, what are some words that come to mind in light of what we've talked about here, some of the things that I've mentioned, but again, what you talked about previously? What are some words that come to mind for you? Go ahead and start entering some of those. Mm-hmm. Okay, so problem solving, hopeful, identify strategies. Yeah, hitting your groove. Yeah, definitely. Reset, nice word. Hope and hopeful there. Yeah. I think there's a lot that we have learned, again, brought on by COVID, but then even coming out of that and now facing some new issues, as mentioned before, like with mental health, that being on the forefront, homelessness kind of rising, the recession coming in and so on. But new accomplishments, a fresh start, stick with it. Absolutely. Yeah. Great words. Definitely. Look, I want to thank you, Patrick, for inviting me to talk with everybody, to have a few minutes. And despite the technology blips, I'm glad we got through it. So there you go. Thanks again for inviting me.
Thank you so much, Don, for that presentation, for sharing that important information. Any questions for Don? We kind of wrap up. Getting great thanks, Don, in the chat, giving us much to think about, and those resources, the power of a positive team and the Oz principle. I definitely think those are worth an investment. So thank you.
That could be some good poolside reading, especially if somebody broke the rules and had digestive issues. Anyway, sitting by the pool. Right, so there you go.
Absolutely. Thank you so much again. We appreciate you.
All right, everybody. Well, take care. It was good seeing you. Thanks again for the invite. Hope you have a terrific summer, and I hope we're going to get to see you in Atlanta. I'm going to go ahead then and sign off and let you finish up your meeting.
So I know that we are just a couple minutes over, and I just wanted to share one final thought here. We've been talking about perspective, progress, the work ahead, and certainly I think we can't forget about the purpose of why we do what we do. I think that sometimes our purpose in adult education is really broad. We really just want to help people be better, right? And so I saw this and I thought, this applies to us, is that, their mission statement is, why are we doing this? And but I really resonated with the bottom. It's not a great mission statement. We'll revise it if things get better, right? Kind of thinking about adult education, we really just want to help everyone, and it's not really an articulate message sometimes. It's really kind of general, and oftentimes we encounter people that really just, even after we explain what we do, they still don't quite understand what we do. But it is really important what we do, and we just got to keep again tweaking it, evolving it, and kind of stay committed to it. So just want to leave you with that last question on your sheet. And we won't necessarily have time to reflect on it today, but what supports do you already have in place to kind of reach the goals that you want to for next program year? Really thinking about our strengths-based assets, and what do we have? What worked well? What did we learn? We've learned a lot. Even if we've learned, I'm never going to do that again. We really have learned a lot. And then what are additional supports that we need to achieve what we want to? I think that's important as we think about next year, fresh perspective, our goals, and really going forward. So I want to leave you there with that. And I just want to wish you well as you enter into this summer. I'd like you just to, we don't have to respond to this question, but really just appreciate you all taking the time to think about those questions. I hope that you'll refer back to them perhaps throughout this next program year and kind of think back of, hey, did we reach some of those goals, or maybe I want to modify those or tweak those. Give us feedback on these types of sessions and if they're valuable for you. But I just really appreciate all of you, the leadership that you have. I just want to wish you well. I know many of us are taking vacations this summer, and some of us are staying, working all year long too. So no matter where you go, I would just thank you, and want to remind you to look for pool signs before you enter into any waters. So take care, everybody. We'll see you
I want to
soon.
add that to my pool deck just to watch people, to see it, first of all, if anyone actually reads it and how they would react to it.
No.
Stick the lake.